Cybernation Uncensored.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tales from the Forlorn Dopes. I am one of the hosts, Cybersmily.
Greetings, programs. I am the other host, Wisdom. We are very happy to be here today. We are going to be starting our review of the Chromebooks.
Yes. So before we get to that, what's in the news of Cyberpunk? So I believe there has been confirmation that there is not only one but two possible animes coming out.
That's in addition to the live action.
That's in addition to the live action. So there has been hints on various interviews from either a earnings call and including interview. I believe so. CDPR Red has a thing called Answered, with Red, of course, highlighted. It's a podcast from two of the developers for. I think they worked on both Witcher and Cyberpunk. But basically, they're inviting people from CDBR to talk about their experiences working on these games, and they had a few of the people from Cyberpunk talking about it. Also, the other thing when it comes to CDPR, they also dropped a recent patch, which I think broke everyone's mods. But it wasn't that big of a. And it wasn't that big of a patch. It just gave it just checked. I think they had like a bucket list, and they just wanted to check off the SSD. So they can say, well, we promised it and we gave it to you, whether or not the fans are happy now. But yeah, if you ever listen to any of those earning calls, they kind of give some insight into what they're working on and the progress they're making, because they do show a breakdown of their staff and what the staff is specifically working on. And that's how you can tell when things are starting to ramp up for something. I know Project Orion currently has like 60 to 80 people on it right now, but I have a feeling well, according to them, next year, beginning of next year, they're going to start ramping those numbers up. So I have a feeling we're going to get a Cyberpunk version sooner than we think. And they've also made promises that they're going to deliver 3 games of a specific title within 10 years. So once Cyberpunk, the sequel comes out, within a couple years, another one's going to come out, and another one, and another one. So I guess they're planning on doing one game every 3 years, every 3 to 4 years, for each IP.
That's a pretty ambitious plan.
Well, so I think because they restructured, and now that they have basically 2 dedicated teams for each property, I think they can be more focused, because what I think happened with like The Witcher and Cyberpunk was, we got that trailer in 2013. However, they were still working on Witcher 3, and then Witcher 3 came out, and the developers continued to work on Witcher 3 for the 2 expansions. And only after Blood and Wine wrapped up did they transfer all the developers over to Cyberpunk. And that was, I think, in 2016, 2017, around that area. So those who say, oh, they spent 7 years developing Cyberpunk, they spent 7 years planning for Cyberpunk. Developing for it, not so much. I think that the hardcore development started back in
Yeah, it
2016.
didn't start in earnest until 2016. Before that, it was all plans and pipe dreams, and them telling us stuff that we could expect, and then delivering on none of that shit and giving us other stuff instead.
Yep.
Which, it's insane to think, for how much they promised and how little of that they delivered on, how it still is one of the best games I've ever played. Like, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yes. So that's where CDPR is. And I also saw a blurb, and I know a lot of people have always questioned, like, who owns the licensing to Cyberpunk, the property, and that is definitely CDPR. I think they control it, the majority. So do not... And I believe I saw that posted by someone on our RTG as well, confirming that. Now, of course, they're RTG is heavily involved with CDPR, but just make no mistake. And I think one of the other things that came out of that was, well, now RTG has a boatload of money from CDPR. I'm like, no, Mike has a lot of money from CDPR. That doesn't mean RTG does. So, right. So the other thing was the board game. I think we talked a little bit about that last time with the their Kickstarter or GameFound. Basically, their crowdsourcing.
Yeah, the really poor way they're handling that.
Yeah, well, they finished it up and they got 6 million, I think, maybe more. I didn't appreciate that at the end, that they added yet an all-in-one at the very end, and then they added another all-in-one 24 hours later.
Shady stuff.
And if you didn't buy that big all-in-one, then you didn't get this free, one thing. So they were just playing on your FOMO to basically spend almost triple the amount that they originally were asking for. So that kind of was a bit of annoying on how they ran that. But the miniatures look awesome. The board game looks kind of playable. I mean, it looks like you're kind of taking the tabletop RPG and kind of creating a board game situation out of it. So it's more basically board gaming scenario, right? And missions, which seemed like, because I saw a demo of it and it seems interesting. But until I get it in my hands and play with it, I don't know how the experience is going to be. But the components look great. I really like the components.
It's all vapor until it's in your hand.
Yeah. And other Cyberpunk news, Monster Fight Club just released 2 more sets. One of them, I believe, is for Danger Gal, so an expansion for Danger Gal. And then the other one, I believe, was for Maelstrom. They also are now issuing individual miniatures. So if you don't want to buy a whole set of them, or you're like me and had the Kickstarter and I got one miniature out of one of the boxes that they're releasing, so I don't need, I don't want to have duplicates. This allows you to kind of bypass that, which is nice. They're $10 an individual miniature. I mean, I guess this day and age, that's how much miniatures are going to go for. I mean, they are nice quality.
Yeah.
Very detailed.
It's not very economical to buy them one at a time. You can buy.
Yeah.
They generally come in sets of 3. For what, like 15?
No, it's more like 20, I believe, or 20, 25.
Oh man, it's been so long since I bought one because who the fuck can afford that for 3 little pieces of plastic? I can't. But,
Yeah, I remember my good old days. I used to spend $1 on a lead miniature.
well, speaking of good old days, if you head to a website called Merlyton, you can pick up the original Cyberpunk miniatures from the box sets. They apparently have the molds and are reissuing them.
Yes.
You can pick them up in generally sets of 3 to 4, and they'll run you between 10 and 12 pounds or euros. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a caveat to that, right? So they're based in UK. So if you are outside of the UK, shipping might kill you.
Yeah. But in addition to, like, they've got some of the harder to find, they've also got the Bozos and the Maelstrom from the blister packs. So they got not only the Grenadier ones, but they also got Ralparthas. Who did the individual blister packs? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. You would know better than me because you have your master list.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to look that up.
So, anyways, yeah, I think that company's been around for a while. It's just one of those little hidden gems that you don't know about. Because the search algorithm isn't gonna show it up because I'm sure that the company isn't doing a proper SEO to get and bolster their little company. While you're finding that out, the other big news from our Talsorian is that
I guess they all were Grenadier. So, yeah. Soldiers and Swords had their own, but these aren't part of those.
Yeah, I mean, I know they mentioned that there was Ralpartha, but I don't remember them having them.
No,
I always thought it was Grenadier.
No, it was. The ones people are familiar with are all Grenadier, but Soldiers and Swords, they had their own. Like 4 different 3-figure sets. Rockers, Netrunners, Solos, and Corporate. I don't know where you would find those. Hell, they may. I don't know if Soldiers and Swords is in business at all. I want to say they were actually a little bit better quality because they used a harder metal. And they had the detached bases. But that's neither here nor there. It originally excited me finding this out because I know Seth Skorkowski at one point was really looking for the Cyberpunk, the Nomad motorcycle.
Yep.
And apparently he got one because I reached out to him and hey buddy, look at this. But yeah. So if you're looking for some of those ultra rare minis, there you go. And individually, at least, they're like half the price of the plastic ones.
Well, again, depending upon what country you live in.
Again, shipping. Yeah.
It can run you high, I'm sure. And the last news is, or that I know about, at least from the gaming aspect of Cyberpunk, is that our Talsorian has announced the release date of Tales of the Red, Hope Reborn, the sequel to Tales from the Forlorn Hope.
Yeah.
That's coming out on the October 15th, which is the day. broadcasting the day after, so we will do a review of that book on the 16th.
Yeah, and apparently we're starting to move up in the world because we got advanced screener copies of it.
But we're not going to talk about it.
We're not going to talk about it. Just that we got it. Just that we know. We're cool like that. So as soon as the media blackout is lifted, we will be throwing down some input.
Yep. Other things.
Also.
Yep.
On the R. Talsorian website, the September DLC is out, which is murder mystery stuff. It's really cool. I really like this. I didn't
see that.
Oh yeah, this in fact might be my favorite DLC to come out in quite a while.
Why am I learning about this now?
I don't know. Why have you not been paying attention, my brother?
I don't know. Oh, because I see what happened.
What?
I think because there was announcements of Tales of the Red.
Yeah,
I thought it was the blog. Oh, I gotta read this now.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Is this what Jay was talking about with kind of playing a mystery as kind of like an opponent in which you have to solve so many clues to solve the mystery?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's definitely part of what's going on with this.
Oh, I gotta read it, and we can talk about it next time. Man, all right, I am behind the ball on this. All right, yeah. So over into media. I would say these things are kind of cyberpunk adjacent. Not necessarily a pure cyberpunk, but there is a new series called Citadel Diana. Citadel was, I believe, I forgot what movie it was. Was that the one with Ryan Reynolds in it?
No, the one with Ryan Reynolds was Ryan Reynolds and Scarlett Johansson.
No.
Michael Clark Duncan.
No. I was thinking of the one with The Rock.
I didn't know The Rock and Ryan Reynolds had ever been in a movie together. Oh! No, maybe. Yes, they have. God, it was awful. Jesus. I had pushed that one out of my head.
Oh, no, sorry. Citadel was the one with
that
Stark.
Definitely was not Citadel.
Yeah, Stark.
Robert Downey Jr.
No, not Stark. Marvel Stark Games of Thrones. The one where they have amnesia. So the original one was. I don't
guess I've even heard of this one. I'm not aware of Citadel.
So Citadel was from the Russo brothers. It was a made-for-Prime movie. The actor's name is Richard Madden. No, Richard Madden. He played Robb Stark, basically the oldest son in Games of Thrones.
I forgot he even existed.
Yeah. So he stars in it with Priyanka Chopra something. What's her last name? Chopra Jonas. So anyways, it's probably something that you probably would like to see or watch. It's basically a spy organization that's there to govern above all the other governments. A series? It kind of was a series, kind of movie. It was made for
a series. I did watch that. That was fantastic.
Yeah. So there's another one called Citadel Diana, which is kind of an equal. So there's that. So it's kind of like a ultra high tech spy type of movie. There is another movie coming out called Canary Black with Kate Beckinsale. Beckinsale? Beckinsale.
Beckinsale.
Beckinsale. Which is, again, another spy movie, high-tech. So, again, these are kind of like Cyberpunk adjacent. Kind of near future. A little bit of dystopia, I suppose. But not as gritty as, like, most Cyberpunk movies. There's also another movie called Ballerina, which is part of the John Wick
Heard about
universe.
Ballerina. Yeah, that I'm pretty excited about that one.
So, John Wick, of course, definitely Cyberpunk vibe, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
Another
you're doing it right.
an anime coming out, Tomb Raider, which, you know, when I saw it come out, I was like, Tomb Raider's kind of Cyberpunk, but not. I mean, it also has like magic, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever consider Tomb Raider Cyberpunk, even Cyberpunk adjacent. It's had some Cyberpunk elements in the past, but like the rebooted Tomb Raider has been pretty straightforward, just action adventure, to the point that they're even like, I'm not gonna say they're keeping the magic to, like, they're underplaying the magic aspect, because there's always zombies and shit like that because they're inescapable in video games now. But yeah, they've always been solid action games, and
Right.
I guess action is always going to be Cyberpunk adjacent. So
Yeah. So those are the things that are coming out soon. I know there's still talk about Tron Ares is supposed to be coming out next year. Same with
yeah,
Blade Runner 2099, Splinter Cell. I tried to follow up.
Splinter Cell is an adjacent project that I have high hopes for. I really love the old Splinter Cell games. I never could figure out why they stopped making those, especially since all the other Tom Clancy crap just is flooding the market.
Yeah. Has it? And there's also Megalopolis, which has it been released yet? I heard it's not that great.
I mean, I hear it's not that great, but I'm very excited to see it. I love the director. I love the cast. I don't know how cyberpunk it's actually going to be, but I know it takes heavy influence, and it's kind of an homage to Metropolis.
Yeah.
So at the very least, it will be adjacent.
Yeah. And Rotten Tomato critics give it a 47%. Viewers give it a 35%. So I don't think it's going to be great, but I think it's probably going to be an interesting watch. At least looking for any type of cyberpunk elements, and you have Giancarlo Esposito.
Esposito.
Gotta love him. Love him in everything he does, and Aubrey Plaza. So
Love her and everything. Just love her, period. Like, I adore Aubrey.
Shia LaBeouf, but I'm not sure about him.
Yeah, no, he's the drawback. He tends to ruin whatever he touches, but that's not entirely true. He's done some good movies, but he's always the worst part of whatever movie he's in. Yeah, I mean,
Also, if you check out the Neuromancer IMD page, they put up Molly, and who supposedly is going to be playing Molly.
who's that?
Brianna Middleton. She looks like she hasn't been in too much. I think the only thing recently is the Inheritance. A lot of the other things I don't recognize.
I really, really wanted to see Dinah Meyer from Johnny Mnemonic reprise the role, even though she wasn't playing Molly in the movie. She was playing Molly. She just wasn't. Wasn't what she was named.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been nice to see some of those. The only other person they have listed is Case, who is Callum Turner. He was in the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts series. I think he was. I think he was one of the brother of the main protagonist.
I couldn't tell you. I stopped looking at the Neuromancer page because, again, that's just vaporware. They've been talking about making a movie for that for as long as I've been paying attention.
True.
And
but they got names, so
I mean, sure, they've got names. When something
they got directors.
When I see footage from it, I'll believe it's real.
Yeah. Well, I would say Mega City 1 is more vaporware than Johnny Mnemonic right now.
Oh. Yeah, Mega City 1 is...
God, I would love to see that. But...
They're never going to make that, and that's
No,
so goddamn disappointing to me.
I know.
Like, Carl Urban is aging out, so they can't get at him anymore. Which sucks, because, Jesus, he was perfect. And, yeah. No, there's... Dread was the best Cyberpunk movie of the last 20 years, bar none.
Yeah. There was a fan film called Judge Minty, and it's on YouTube. It's about half an hour. Basically, it's an old judge who has to retire. The production value for that was pretty decent.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It was. It was quite surprising. It reminded me of the old. I don't know. That old Batman versus Predator fan film that they put out, like in the early mid 2000s.
Yep. And it has the quality of a B movie, which is saying a lot, especially for a made for YouTube fan film.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a half hour.
Well, I mean, some of those fan films have huge budgets, and like I've seen some with like A-list actors in them. Thomas Jane came back and did a Punisher fan film.
Oh, really?
Laundry Day. Yeah, it's fantastic. He doesn't wear the skull, and they don't actually call him Frank Castle. But basically, it's the Punisher while he's doing his laundry.
I'll go check that out.
That sounds kind of silly, but it's much better than you would believe. And yeah, they put that out in between the original. I'm not going to say the original because the original was Dolph Lundgren, but the Thomas Jane Punisher and
Dirty
Punisher
Laundry,
Warzone.
not Laundry Day.
Same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's technically a fan film. It's only like 5, maybe 10 minutes long.
Yeah. Oh, I'll check that out. Well, I don't think I got too much else. I really should start taking a look at books and starting to read again, just to find new material to talk about, especially in the literary world.
Yeah, I mean, it those conversations definitely need to be had. Um, there's nothing that really jumps out from the comic book world right now. Obviously, the new Cyberpunk 2077 series from Dark Horse is still going. Um, they just released a trade paperback of a miniseries called Red Light, which is about an android sex worker. Uh, I'm not going to say too much more about that. It was pretty good. I liked it. But it's very not safe for work.
I'll make sure I work from home that day if I do.
Um,
So that's about it.
yeah, I mean it's kind of dry on the cyberpunk comic front right now. Um, yeah, that's really about it as far as media goes. It's hard to review like actual like literature books because so much gets released and I can't keep track of all of it. I can't afford to read all of it, and trying to find it in a library is, well, it's a needle in a haystack.
Yep.
Um, because they don't ever like, here's our cyberpunk section. That's not a thing. So
Yeah, my wife
unless
found a series by J.D. Robb. If you don't know who J.D. Robb is,
yeah, my mom loved those things, and I ended up reading a bunch of them. But yeah, there's cyberpunk bodice rippers.
yeah. Well, she goes. What the hell's her name? So J.D. Robb is a alias for her true name, which is
Nora
Nora
Roberts.
Roberts. Yeah. So Nora Roberts is a big romance novelist.
Yeah. And they're all like in death. They all have in death in the title.
Yeah. So my wife was like, "Oh, this is cyberpunk." I'm like, "No."
I mean, they are in fact cyberpunk. They're cyberpunk romance novels, which is a thing in and of itself, I guess. Um,
So you're saying they're kind of worth reading or no?
I mean, they're very. The character is a cop in a futuristic setting. I read like 6 of them because, well, I kept thinking they'd get better and they didn't.
So they use the language of he rubbed his manhood. And I
I
felt the
mean, they're very
passion.
much. Yeah, they're science fiction heaving bosoms. I mean, that's just what they are. Uh, there's some really cool, like, I'm not gonna lie and say there aren't cool cyberpunk elements to it. There are. It's just the romance aspects of it are so very cliche. Like, she's the best at what she does, and blah blah blah. She's it gets a bit much.
Right. I mean, it sounds like it kind of reminds me of Altered Carbon. However, Altered Carbon was written in a man's view of sex scenes, and that goes to a different other way.
Cliche, no
Yeah.
Which side of the staff you fall on, but
Literally.
But yeah, no, her boyfriend is the richest guy on the planet, and she's just a New York cop trying to do her thing.
Of course. Because that's what, Jeff Bezos' wife did. She was a New York cop. Oh, Bezos was hanging out.
Yeah, no, I was working as a caregiver for 48-hour straight shifts when I tried reading those, because it was just whatever entertainment I could find.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that I would recommend.
Duly noted.
I wouldn't. They're not bad.
Yeah.
They're just not my thing.
Well, my wife was like, because I'm not a big reader, she was like, "Oh, these are easy to read, so you'll enjoy them." Like, okay.
I will say they do go by pretty fast.
Yeah, because my wife, she literally can read a romance novel in half a day.
Yeah.
She's like, they're popcorn. Be just something to nibble on while you're reading
Women-
a thicker book, right?
Yeah.
And
No, it's
more
it's,
dense
it's
material.
porn consumption for women, and
Yeah. Anywho, so let's get into the Chromebooks, which I think is one of the best parts of the Cyberpunk universe. Is gear porn.
I mean,
Speaking of porn,
it's certainly the most reread and flipped through books in the Cyberpunk catalog, because it is in fact a they are gear catalogs, and I don't know, they're fantastic. I love the Chromebooks. I've loved them ever since the very first one. I would in fact say that the Chromebook 1, more than even the rule book, is what first hooked me into the game. Every page is an inspiration. Every page you can write a scene around in your head, or I could anyway. There's 4 Chromebooks in total in the 2020 line. Obviously, there's now black Chrome for red, but
tons of authors and artists.
yeah,
Not sure.
including all the old favorites: Hawkabout, Jackson, Wright, Sam Liu.
Yeah, and I think it was Wright who was talking about how he first got into Artalsorian, and it was through the Chromebook. And just the design of the book, and to make it look like a catalog of various equipments and other things.
Yeah, I mean, Artalsorian had already been putting out, like, with Solo of Fortune and Rocker Boy, they'd already been putting things out in magazine, like a fake magazine style. But this is like a fake Sears catalog, Sears wish book for Cyberpunk, and it's such a beautiful format. I don't know off the top of my head which came first, Chromebook 1 or what was the Shadowrun one called? Street Samurai catalog. I don't know which came first off the top of my head. I know they were both out at about the same time.
I would think it was.
I'm pretty positive Chromebook came first.
Yeah, because Chromebook came out in '91.
Yeah, it was still. Was it 91 or 90? Because it was
91.
Still very, very early. But anyway, each of the 4 Chromebooks has a similar theme for the cover. Some type of some type of very sexy female with heavy cyberpunk elements. The first cover for Chromebook 1 is it's not Hajime Sorayama, but it's somebody basically ripping him off.
Yep.
To the point that I thought it was him at the start, or when I first picked it up.
Oh no, the first Street Samurai catalog was in 1990.
Really?
So it
Okay, well.
did beat out Chrome.
I still think Chrome did it better. And they certainly followed it up better.
Yeah. But yeah, the art in this book I think is the best from any of the other books.
It's very varied. Some of it's the best. Some of it is not so much. And
The later Chromes, some of it wasn't that great, but the first Chrome, for me, the art in this kind of captured
again,
it.
For some things, I'm not gonna call out names, but for some of the stuff, the art just really doesn't mesh well with what is going on in the rest of the book. Obviously, the stuff by Wright and Hockabout and Jackson and Lou it's top notch, and it is exactly what you want when it comes to Cyberpunk. And later on, Artal Sorian released like compilation books that had, Cyberpunk or Chromebook 1 and 2 and then Chromebook 3 and 4 condensed into their own books. But I think what we want to do today is do them one at a time. I don't know how far along the line we'll get, if we'll be able to do them all today or...
Well, I don't think we should go into every single piece of gear, right? I think each section we can give a bit of a highlight and then choose which items I think are kind of the important ones. And I think Chrome 1 is hard because there's so much in it. And I think this book...
I was completely wrong about the artist for this book, by the way.
Yeah.
Ben Wright, obviously, but neither Hockabout nor Jackson had anything to do with the first Chrome. Instead, we had Justin Chim, Scott Ruggles, Sean Howell, Carl Wu, Sandy Calora, and Mike Pondsmith. Although they spell his... It looks like they spelled his name wrong.
No.
No, I just had a crappy display. It was looking like the S was an E, and I was like, Pondymith. Oh. But no, it's just a crappy display.
Yeah, and the one thing I liked about, and just from a high level of it, is this is the book that kind of like started pushing the corporate aspect to gear, right? You don't have, the line tapper detector. You have the Tritech line tap detector, which you kind of saw it in the main book with some of the weapons, but it didn't really carry over into much of the cyberware or the gear. So this is where they kind of like started pushing the envelope and kind of giving you, I think, a more immersive experience with the game compared to other games.
Nearly every piece of tech in the book, they list the manufacturer. And like you said, it just creates a much more immersive display. It sucks you right in. It makes you feel like, it makes you believe in the world it's coming from.
Yep.
And it really lets you know, like, okay, well, if this corporation is putting out this kind of stuff here, then the stuff I make up, it gives me a guideline for the kind of stuff they're actually making. Much more than like a small blurb, well, they make electronics.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's great to say, but,
And also
actually having examples beats that every time.
Right. And the Chromebooks try to follow a pattern, right, compared to other of the source books out there. So they actually split up all the equipment into different sections. So you'll have the electronics slash miscellaneous gear. You'll have cyberware. You'll have weapons, vehicles, services, programs, at least programs for a little while. So they split up each section, so it helped with you trying to find exactly what you're looking for. When you used to have to have a physical copy of the book to reference, and you can just flip to specific sections and start looking it up.
Yeah. These are also the only books in the line that have an index.
Yes. Very important.
Very important.
So let's get started with the electronics and miscellaneous techware. Again, it runs the gamut. Some of it is definitely dated. I think the advanced communication suitcase is a little overkill nowadays for the tech.
You just have to really beef that up into something more than what's available.
Yeah.
Because what's there is like in the year of 1991, that looks super futuristic and awesome.
True.
Now you look at it and you're like, man, I can fit that on a smartwatch. I don't even need a phone for that. But yeah, you could totally beef that up and make it cooler. But even by 1990 terms, like for what basically amounts to a laptop, it's pretty clunky.
Yeah. It's basically a suitcase laptop.
Yeah. It's one of those things that to make it relevant in a game that you're trying to run from today's perspective, you'd really need to beef that up into something else.
The other piece of tech, which I think is pretty dated, is the EBM Carfax.
Yeah.
Don't think that is no longer... sorry. The EBM Carfax 2002. So...
yeah.
I assume the model came out in 2002, and it's already 2020 in the game. So apparently, this one Carfax was all they ever needed for 18 years.
I mean, it's the new portable cellular fax machine. I don't know why I imagine it was supposed to be Carfax 2020, not 2002. But who knows? It's most of today's audience don't even know what a fax machine is.
Yep. So, in this section, what do you think is all right, I'm going to give you 3 criteria. What's the one item you think is the most useful, game mechanic-wise? What item do you often buy that's in this section, like for any of your characters? And then the third thing is, what is your favorite item, even though you don't really buy it and don't really use it? But you just, it's the cool element. If you want, I'll go first, right? So game mechanic wise, the best item I feel, there's too many of them too,
there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a ton.
I mean, I have to go with probably the speed holster, just because the faster you go, the the more likely you're going to finish off your person.
It's a holster that gives you a bonus to initiative for speed draw.
Yeah.
And whatnot.
My item that I always will buy for all my characters is a sleep inducer.
Sleep inducer is a good one.
And then the third item, which is I think is kind of the rule of cool item, I'm gonna have to go with a shower in a can. Just because I think that's hilarious.
I mean, to me, that's more important than the sleep inducer. Just not stinking is important.
So which
right.
3 items you got for it?
Absolutely the most useful thing in the book at the time was the what's it called? Give me just 1 second. I was just looking at it. The Datatel map maker. Basically, it was a GPS before GPSs were a thing in real life. So
and no longer a thing.
Yeah, no longer. They're again. It's one of those things that now your phone does everything. But in 1990, this idea was revolutionary. The idea that, you know, satellite tracking will pinpoint your location, will lay out a map of your surrounding area. You can edit it, and it comes with a stylus and all this other stuff. It was a really groovy piece of tech back then. I think probably if I were to just go with like what I'd go with today, then I'd go with the advanced alarm removal kit. That's you're never going to tech out of being able to pick locks well.
What item do you, all your characters usually end up buying?
All my characters usually end up, well, I mean, you said shower in a can, which is what I was going to go with originally.
That was my cool item. The thing that I will always buy is a sleep inducer.
Well, I mean, that's for me, that would have been all my characters are going to buy the shower in a can, because I mean, you just throw one of those in your bag and you're good to go. The ID badge maker, I would say, is I've had more characters have that than not have it, because it's just so freaking useful. Rule of cool. Just purely for the art of it, the Cybercam EX1. It's just so 90s anime influenced. Like the headgear, like it should really have bunny ears coming off of it. Like it looks like basically the headgear you would find in anime like Gal Force,
Yeah.
or Bubblegum Crisis, just that kind of cool. And the visor looks like Cyclops' visor from the X-Men. It's just cool looking, and I always appreciate it.
Yeah, it just
the IR combat cloak is also good.
got it. All right, moving on. We have vehicles, which this is pre maximum metal, so the stats were kind of wonky, and how they were given.
They don't follow the same. They don't follow the format set down in maximum metal, and it can be painful trying to decipher that sometimes.
Yeah. So
also, this is one of the sections where the art becomes really, like, the good art is fantastic, and the art that's not so great becomes really distracting from the rest of it.
which art do you don't like in this section? Just curious.
You know, the Arasaka Riot 8. I don't want to list the artist because I'm saying negative things, but he's got a bunch of entries in the vehicle section for this, and his AV9. Like I don't like any of his stuff, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, it's just it's very low detailed in ways that matter. Like there are lines to it, but they don't seem to serve any purpose.
Well, that's one of the
Um,
aspects I liked about some of the art in here was that kind of unfinished, raw look. To me, very. It seemed like there was a lot clean lines. Is what I enjoy. And sure, some of it might look a little weird, but I just loved all the
I mean,
vehicle section
it's
art.
weird that the same artist who gives us the Riot 8 and the pedicab, which is a great idea, but I think the art is not great. Also gives us the Shiva, which is incredibly cool looking.
Right.
Although I've stared at that image for hours and I'm still not sure how one's supposed to ride it. In fact, he's it's the same artist for most of the art in this section. And I don't know. I've never really cared for this artist.
Right.
It's too cartoony for me. I think that's what it comes down to.
Got it. So, the most useful book or useful vehicle from my point of view, it's tough, right? So it depends on how much money the characters have. Because to me, if for useful, it would be the AV9. Just because it has the most use.
Well,
As
yeah, an attack AV, like a full-on assault. Fucking the image that is presented in maximum metal for the AV9 is so much better.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. I mean, yeah. As for the vehicle that is bought the most by my characters, I'm going to have to say the Shiva,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because the look.
Mm-hmm.
Although the Thunder God is a close second.
Yeah.
And then for Rule of Cool, I'm going to have to go with the Benzene Cascade, just because it's a flying car.
Yeah. It's
In the future, supposed to have those.
I mean, for me it's the same. It's like almost the most utilitarian is probably I'm going to say the BMW 9018. Just because it was a nice, mid-range sedan
You can fit the whole party in
that
it.
you can fit the whole party in. It made sense for a corporate to be driving it. It made sense for just an individual dude to be driving it. It's got a sporty look. Uh,
Yeah, but that
I
price
don't know.
tag.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not something that the characters ever paid for. Hell
True.
no. Like you, the one most bought by my any characters I ran or played or had any of my players was the Shiva, followed by the Thunder God, because motorcycles are cheap.
And very useful in a
Um,
city setting. And uh, open road, too.
yeah. Rule of cool, I gotta go with the pedicab. Just the idea that it's there. I think it's hilarious.
True, true. I'll give you that. All right, moving on to the next session, which is cyberware.
See, here's where the art really starts to pick up.
Yeah, and this is where I think Ben Wright
Yeah.
had some pieces in here.
Um, this is definitely like the all the really great pieces are done by Ben.
And there is just so many pieces of cyberware that are just must-haves.
Yeah. Like this is the section everybody, even more so than guns, you end up drooling over the cyberware. Like, man, I could base an entire character around this one piece of cyberware.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any pieces that are like not useful.
No. Even the ones that are basically just there cosmetically are fucking cool.
Yeah, there's not a piece in here that I would not pick up if given the chance.
No, even the skate feet. The skate feet are freaking awesome.
Yeah. So,
Maybe the Watchman. The Watchman maybe
yeah, I mean,
maybe
you could.
the only thing in here that I wouldn't actually buy, although I can see why people would, because it's a TV in your arm, and that's fucking cool. It's not something my character would have, but it's something people he talks to would.
Yeah. So, for me, the best option in here, and there's so many, but I'm going to have to go with the Opti Shield. And the reason why is because would be because of the Kuroshi Opti Shield, is because not only can you have the Opti Shield on top, but my thinking is you can also have Cyber Eyes underneath. Which,
Yeah, it's a nice way to double up.
yeah, so it gives you yet another the anti-dazzler feature for free.
Yeah.
Plus, it
Plus,
protects your eyes.
permanent protection from any irritant, and it's got, yeah, armor.
So that's the
Kuroshi Opti shields are.
that's game mechanically, I think, the best. As for what my characters buy often is the Times Square Plus. I think that is always a must.
It's so ubiquitous. It becomes as soon as it was introduced, it became such a must-have that I stopped even looking at character sheets. It's there. They're gonna have it.
Yeah, and then the Rule of Cool, I have to go with the Gang Jazzler. Just because I love that, especially if you're a martial artist, and you strike at the head, try to kill that person.
It's the zip zap that just keeps on giving, keeps on zipping and zapping, and it's so like it just hides under your fingernail, and you just like, who's gonna expect that?
Yep, and that's the other thing that I think brings up one of the flaws of Cyberpunk 2020 is the consistency of rules. If you start reading into some of these things, they kind of like aren't necessarily consistent with what a taser is, right? And you would think a Gang Jazzler is a taser, but it's not, right? It has special rules in which if the victim, as they put it, needs to make a body roll of 20, or else they're immobile, which very hard to do for most cyberpunks. Now, granted, they then later on say you get to add your endurance skill to this roll, whereas they should have just said make an endurance skill roll. So if you have a 0 endurance, it's a straight up body. If you roll less than a 15, which is for an average punk is going to definitely hit, and you get hit in the head or torso, you're dead. So this is kind of like the old Dungeons and Dragons
It's a little bit
save or
overpowered,
die.
Yeah.
but love it.
It's out of balance with what's going on with the rest of the game at this point.
Yeah.
But it was early in the game's development. They were still trying stuff out.
True. So you're 3.
All right. Most often purchased. I would say any character I ever had who had a cyber limb or a cyber arm would get digits cyber fingers. Each finger on the hand having its own little cybernetic bit, cybernetic gimmick. You know, you got your lock picks, your pens, got a laser. I mean, they're not big things for the most part, but I mean, you can get a finger bomb.
Yep.
It's not going to do a whole lot of damage, but it might blow out a lock. Yeah, Dynalar cyber digits are just, they're insanely useful. It's like having a Swiss Army knife on your hand.
Yep. And Red improved them. You can now have 6 or 6 to 8 fingers.
Yeah, you get an extra thumb.
Yeah.
Let's see. As I said earlier, the skate feet are just... I'm not going to have many characters that aren't going to wear shoes. Like, even if they've got cyber feet, they'll wear shoes, fashion-wise. But the skate feet are just so... I don't know. They make your movement allowance ridiculous. You're like outrunning cars at that point. You pair those with something like Corvette cyber legs. I mean, nothing's catching you. Bullets still catch you, I guess. And rule of cool. Actually, I'm also a big fan of the body weight decentralized heart.
Yeah.
It's not something most of my characters will get, just because that's pretty invasive cyberware. But the higher level ones who can really appreciate good cybernetics, they go for that. And lastly, you know, rule of cool. I love the wrist-mounted flashbulb. Just the art alone of it, it's cool to me.
Yeah, I've used that in a couple of characters or NPCs at least, just because knocking out a party and having them either go into a psychomotor paralysis for D6 minutes, just as
I mean, it's
great.
It's one of those, you know, thinking sideways type of cyber bits, and it just looks cool. The bulb is in your wrist. I can't imagine that would be all that sturdy, but it looks neat.
Yeah, and the other thing with that is, again, it's so overpowered, right? In that you have to...
Yeah, I think they were just starting to realize the inherent power creep that guns were presenting, guns and armor.
Yeah.
And they were looking for, you know, sideways options to kind of alleviate that. And they went a little bit overboard at the beginning with things like the Gang Jazzler and the Flash Bulb.
Yeah, because the flash bulb is you have to make a reflex roll against a 20. You can add your dodge skill, which I would probably also include martial arts if you have dodge as a key attack. So if you fail that, then you have to make a cool roll, an impossible cool roll. So that means you need a 30 plus, where you get to add in resist torture. Or else you go into freaking paralysis for a D6 minutes.
I don't understand the reasoning behind it being a cool roll.
Yeah.
I don't know how calm you are under pressure really affects, I'm blind, but
But just to make it an
here we go.
impossible roll. I mean, that's a 30. You need
Yeah.
a 10 cool and a 10 resist, and then
Yeah,
roll a
it's
10 on the
ridiculous.
die.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not, it's not something that you're going to come across. And players never expect it. They just never fucking expect it. And you tell them that, okay, this is the rules as written.
True.
And be prepared to hear a lot of whining.
Yeah, and but then again, anti-dazzler, gets rid of this. So again, that's why
Yeah, it just makes it worthless.
all my characters are always usually bare minimum is they get cyber eyes, just because they anti-dazzler, and just because of that. Well, one of those items, just because it is just heinous. So, moving on. We were talking about weapons and armor escalation. Now we're on to weapons.
Yeah, this is the other one. This is the other section that everybody stares at for the longest. They read each and every word in this section, looking for whatever advantage or whatever bit of cool they can. It's guns and swords and sharp sticks. So what do you like, pal?
All right. Well, first off, the art to me is reminiscent of the James Bond art tabletop role playing game.
The Q catalog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives off that same vibe.
Has a very basic shape. I'm gonna say probably Mike Pondsmith drew some of these, just because of how the art
I'm
looks.
not going to say that.
Well,
because I don't.
I think, and again,
some of the art is absolutely fantastic. Some of it is not.
To Mike's credit, I think he did his art on the computer, right? So
Yeah.
think of the technology back in the 90s. So that's why it's like all squared up, very
straight edges,
yeah.
like hard edges.
Yeah. So that's why I think Mike did it, because I think that's where most of Mike's art is.
I don't know if it was done on computer or done with like a ruler.
I'm pretty sure it was
definitely
computer.
Yeah. Like some of it looks really cool, even the simpler stuff. And
but
yeah, I want to say there's at least 3 different artists that worked on this. One of them is obviously Benjamin Wright.
We already know that. Yeah, you drew the Crusher.
Yeah.
Along with some other items. You didn't mention which items, but
yeah.
So,
I mean, it may just be 2 artists, because I'm really willing to just say, okay, well, these are Benjamin Wrights and these are not.
Yeah. So for me, okay, let me just take a look. The weapon I think is kind of the best one out of them. I'm probably going to have to go with the EMP grenade.
That's a good one. That's
as the best.
I mean, that sees so much use.
As for what my characters usually buy out of this section is no. It's probably the Kendachi Mono 2. Just because you're a street samurai,
It,
you
it
need your swords.
I mean, it may sound weird, but I think I've actually had fewer characters buy swords, at least mono swords. Uh, like I've only ever had a handful of them. It's kind of weird and goes against the grain. I always think they're cool, but like they're so, for me they're so character specific. Like you really have to be able to carry it off. It's hard to pull off wearing a sword.
Yep.
Even as a fashion statement, as a weapon, like either way, like that takes a certain sense of style, a certain, I don't know what the Japanese for je ne sais quoi would be, but that's what it requires.
And from a rule of cool, I think the coolest gun that I was always like, oh man, I wish this was just a little more powerful, but because it would be just so awesome of a gun, and that's the Militech Mini Gat machine carbine. Just because our rate of fire 40 was just beyond any weapon that was printed, and just that many rounds going down range, and being able to have a capacity to fire that with 3 rounds of constant fire.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, with Interlock Unlimited and the more detrimental armor degradation rules there, the mini gat's actually a pretty effective gun. Like it's not going to stop hard armor, but against like some of the lighter armors, it's devastating.
Yeah. Well, you could also, use the Solo Fortune 1 and change out the caliber, right? And bump up the caliber.
Make it 9mm. You'll get a very similar ammo capacity, and at that point,
it becomes a more effective weapon.
Yeah, a 9mm minigun basically is just going to shred. Like the first couple of shots aren't really going to do anything, but as that armor starts taking damage, you're turning people into Swiss cheese.
Yep. So what's your 3?
All right, most used or most purchased, the Bioascari motion restraints. Like those are like must-haves for most of the characters I play.
Yeah, again,
just
very
basically
difficult.
being able to throw glue bombs at people. Yeah. Because it hardens nearly instantly. I had a character who would throw it at the front wheels of motorcycles.
Nice.
Yeah. I love the motion restraints. They're very cool. It was a very good idea. Rule of cool is always going to be the Militech Crusher. Just because Benjamin Wright decided to base it off of the Poseidon Nornco gong from Appleseed. It's just got such an iconic look. Like it looking at it makes you, I don't know, for me it evokes the best parts of the Blade Runner PKD mixed with, I don't know, it's just that Whippet style is just so badass. And from a pure style point of view, the Rostovic wrist rockete, whatever.
Right?
It's just such overkill. Like a missile launcher on your wrist. It's basically turns you into Destro. You just
Yep.
it's it's one of those things that when somebody raises up their arm and you see that, everybody dives for cover.
It was brought into Cyberpunk 2077 too.
Well, because the good ideas never die. Um, I gotta say it though. I'm not calling out any individual artist. I'm not saying anybody's name. But man, the Budget Arms Laser Niner is probably the worst piece of art in the book. I look at it and I'm all like,
Well, like
it
that
couldn't even.
that art reminds me of the James Bond catalog, which
It reminds me of
very
the
simplistic,
Palladium.
very simplistic drawing.
The Palladium arms and armor or castles, whatever it was called. It's that simple. Like, I don't know, the grip on the pistol, like, is the opposite direction of what it should be. The trigger is, there's no room for your finger in the trigger. I don't know. It's not good. But the same artist gives us stuff like the Malorian Arms Silver Gun, which is badass. It looks kind of like the original laser tag Starlight Blaster.
Yep.
Or the Setsuko Arasaka PMS, which is kind of like an updated version of the oh shit, they were everywhere in the 90s. Anyway, it's just a cool looking submachine gun. So it's not like everything the dude did was bad. It's just really that it's kind of hit or miss.
Yep. So
this is also where where Johnny Silverhand's
gun
Malorian 3516 comes from, which I gotta say, the video game image for it is much better than the book's image.
Yep, and you also needed a cyber arm to be able to fire it, which of course changes later on. I think for Solo Fortune 2, where they came up with weapons and what kind of like minimum body you needed to fire the weapon.
Yeah, they actually
recoil.
Gave recoil rules.
Yeah. Next, we have the fashion section. This section.
This may be my personal favorite section in the book.
Yeah, because it just, to me, brings the vibe of Cyberpunk alive. Just because
it's
fashion is so important. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and this really, really hammers that style over substance ethos of Cyberpunk. It just makes it perfectly clear.
Yep. So for me, the most effective section is the Gibson Battle Gear. The thing that my characters mostly bought was the Gibson Battle Gear. As for the rule of cool, I mean, the cyber stuff, but the crystalware, I think, is just kind of like presents, I don't know, a vibe of like ultra richness, even though Tanaka's stuff
translucent
is
cybernetics.
Good. If I was just going by images, it's a hard decision to choose which one. Like New Tech, that drawing is just so cool, of just like the position and the art. Yeah, so those are my three.
I think for personal characters, um, I mean, like you said, Gibson is so useful, but it's kind of really utilitarian looking. I preferred AG of Japan, like the light panel trench coats, and uh, it just oozes style. The same with Icon America, the heavy leather look, just badass. Like that, the image of the chick with the leather dress skirt thing and the low slung holster. It's just badass. And then style wise, I got to go with Takanaka Exec. Um, like it's definitely the highest priced of all the stuff. It's where you get into clothing that looks normal but is relatively highly armored, like an opera cloak for SP16.
Yep.
Any corporate that's not wearing Takanaka is just, they're really showing themselves out for not knowing what they're doing.
Oh, they would go with EG, right?
Sure. I wouldn't. Like AG is more. It's more edge runner style than corporate style.
Well, AG is high fashion, right? So I see that as kind of like the clothes from like Demolition Man, right? How the ultra rich and the how people dressed up in that world.
Sure.
But yeah. We're moving on to another section called services, which I think kind of died out after Chrome 2 as a section.
Yeah.
As for this, the most effective one is probably Clean Sweep, which basically gets rid of any bugs that might be in your place to stop counterintelligence from happening to you. I think that's probably, from my point of view, the best service here. As for a service that my characters would buy, I don't think I've ever bought any of the services. I don't think I ever used any of these services. As for Rule of Cool, I think Party Time. Just because I think with Party Time you could have so much fun with it from a GM's point of view.
My characters absolutely used executive transportation services. None of my characters could afford, and well, I'm not going to say none, but most of my characters, especially in the early days of their career, they couldn't afford an armored limo or an AV of any kind. But, you know, for 500 bucks an hour, they could afford an AV for the evening.
Yep.
Like, so yeah, that is probably the one that we use the most. style wise, or just overall, the Psychist bodywear customization, while it's very rarely explicitly stated, it gives you the guidelines to, like, completely customize what your cybernetics look like. And that I want to say that was probably more used than anything else among my players and whatnot. It was just universal that, if you got something, you'd want to make it look like yours.
Yep.
And rule of cool wise, pet minders. Just because that they thought it was important enough to exist, like that they had to talk about it.
Yeah.
The idea that pet minders. Like most of my characters could never afford a pet, but if they did, I'd want to have somebody who could watch it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the next section is chipware, which again is one of those sections that I think died out and got combined in later.
Yeah, even when the book came out, I was like, why isn't this part of the cybernetics section?
Just because they had so much chipware. I mean,
there's a lot of it.
2, 4, 5, like 4 to 5 pages, and each page has like between 5 and 7 chips. So it's pretty extensive, and you definitely want to read through each of these because all of them are useful. So if you don't have any skills that you want to chip, take a look at this section because it is well worth it. As for best chip in the book, I mean, I have to go with the ambidex chip, just because you can now fire your weapons akimbo. And if you have cybernetic eyes, which I always thought was interesting, and get a second chip, you can actually fire your weapons at 2 different people in 2 different locations. So you can do something like...
I love that idea, but every time I picture it in my head, I just, like, one eye's looking one way, the other one's looking the other. Like, your character would look so fucking goofy but badass while doing it.
It kind of reminds me of a scene from the movie Silverado. I don't know if you ever watched that with Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
Where he like shot 2 people from on 2 different sides of a building at once. That was such a good cowboy movie. I'm surprised that it's not.
It's very underrated. Like, nobody ever talks about Silverado.
Yeah. Listeners, if you want a good cowboy movie,
Costner was Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Well, it was Kevin Costner, Daniel Glover, freaking Fish Called Wanda. What's his name? Kevin Kline. Is that his name?
Kevin Kline. Yeah.
And the main character, Christ, I forget his name too. Brian Dennehy. Jeff Goldblum. I think that was one of Jeff Goldblum's first movies too.
He was in that.
Yeah. Fucking good movie.
I don't know. The very first thing I ever saw him in was Death Wish. I want to say Death Wish 3.
Oh.
Maybe it was 2. He just played a bit part.
Right.
Then, of course, Buckaroo Banzai.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, that was probably one of his rising roles. But yeah, what a fucking good movie. So, if you guys are looking for a good cowboy movie from the 80s, Silverado.
Yeah. It's
a lot more lighthearted than Clint Eastwood's movies. Anyways, back to here. So yes, ambidextrous chip. The chip I think that I would often buy, ambidextrous is one, but I would also get the secretarial chip. Just because if my GM ever said, "Oh, you don't, if you can't remember as a person," I can say, Nope, this chip remembered it for me. So,
Yeah.
remind me, DM. Rule of cool. Christ, there's so many. I mean, granted, it probably wouldn't work, but death trance.
Death Trance is a good one.
Just in case you wanted to play dead. But the way Cyberpunk is, usually someone's
They're
going to
gonna
try to rip out all your
double tap you
cyberware.
anyway. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
don't know how effective it would be, but definitely ruled cool. Your choices?
All right. For like the ones my characters got the most, tourism chips. Those were pretty staple. Just give a basic bit of info about wherever you're going. Language a +1, culture a +1. Like just being able to know any little bit about some new place you've never been before. It's useful. It's always going to be useful. Probably the best overall chip. I don't know. It's like I would say the ambidexterity chip, but you already picked that one, so I'm gonna go with the visual recognition chips, particularly the police one. Being able to like scan a crowd and identify criminals, that's useful. That's fucking useful.
Again, another piece of cyberware that went into Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah. And rule of cool, I'm gonna go with the maximum lover chip. Because yeah, me and Shaba Ranks, we're gonna roll with it. Mr. Lava Lava.
That was Shaggy.
Mr. Stubb will only take you too far. The Shaba Ranks was like the Shaggy of the early 90s.
Yeah.
You had to be there.
I was there.
Shaba.
I thought Mr. Lover Lover was Shaggy. Maybe I could be wrong.
Mr. Lover Lover is Shaggy, but Mr. Loverman was Shaba Ranks.
Got it.
And, dude with Jamaican accents, kind of ugly.
Yep.
I get them mixed up.
Right. So now we're moving into housing, which I don't think is, again, another section that would appear in later Chromes. Maybe next Chrome, but I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Anyways, so for here, the most effective one, I would say, is Harris Company. Just because of the amenities it offers. It is definitely an executive's stuff. The one I know my characters have bought constantly is, of course, the coffins. Sleep facility. Arasaka, Arasaka, Arasaka. And I would definitely get, all the add-ins to make sure that my stay was nice and safe.
I remember being like surprised to find out that sleep coffins were fucking real. Like, that's a real thing in Japan.
And some of them are pretty nice.
Yeah, some of them are real cool. Like I would be too claustrophobic to ever try one, but they're fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great idea.
Yeah. Japan has some great ideas, which don't necessarily work in America. I think because
No.
Japan is not a litigating country versus the United States. Because, like, in Japan, they have bars that basically are you pay by the hour, which
Yeah.
can be
booze you up until you
freaking
leave.
deadly.
Yeah.
um,
And it's pretty rare you're going to outdrink a Japanese salaryman. Like, you're just not going to do it.
as
Those
for
guys
good.
live on booze.
Yeah, and for the rule of cool, of course, is the Drifter mobile environment, which I'm surprised they didn't make this the vehicle section.
Again, like the layout of this book is kind of wonky. Like, they're still working out the bugs.
Yeah, gotta talk to Derek again and tell him, what the hell were you thinking, guy?
But for me, like, the Drifter is the one that, like, I've had two different characters by a Drifter. It's just so very fucking useful. I'm gonna drive around in an RV. That's where I'm gonna live. Oh, you figured out where my safe house is? I'm gonna drive across town somewhere else. Good luck. You like the Harris companies. I like the security services professional apartments. They're pretty much the same thing.
More moderate.
Yeah, it's a little bit more moderate. They don't have like AV parking on the roof or anything, but it's a nice protected, a little bit more security, a little bit better security in my eyes.
Yep.
As cheesy as I think Johnny Silverhand is, I think the Silverhand Studios apartment complexes are hilarious. Like, that's like it's just
Johnny who? Oh,
yeah,
that
Johnny
guy.
Who for the that underground rocker. You mean the guy who you probably never heard of him?
Whose albums are scattered throughout the whole city as garbage and posters everywhere and everyone wearing the
play
shirt.
on the radio.
That old
More
guy?
of the songs play on the radio fucking 55 years later than any other band.
Yeah.
But
So,
no, he was underground.
But yeah, his apartment buildings is pretty cool. It the layout actually reminds me of the Christ, what's that district? The North District.
Little apartment places.
The North Industrial District.
Yeah. You get an apartment there and it's pretty much the exact same layout.
Yeah. Kinda.
Busted open doors that you just walk in.
Yeah, so that's that, and then we get to the last section, which is software. I know not a lot of people are fans of the Netrunner aspect of Cyberpunk, at least for 2020, but they still produced quite a bit of software, and all the Chromes, I think all the Chromes have it. So,
I mean, they continually added to their list of programs and net running options. I don't really have an opinion on any of the stuff in this section because after like the first month, we were like, no more net runners. It's just too much of a pain in the ass.
Right. Well, again, I'm not going to get into it, but there was ways of dealing with it, and again,
sure.
The main things were making
later
sure that
on, we definitely
the
had
player
alternate ways of doing it.
and the player needed to know the rules, in my group. Second, I
Yeah.
didn't mind doing theater of the mind and not kind of hashing through, okay, you just travel, you gain this much trace, don't worry about the rest of that. But going in and just
Yeah,
doing a
exactly.
quick dialogue and then switching between the party and that player.
That was my thing. It wasn't so much that the rules were that difficult. The idea that the rules like flowed differently than anything else in the game
Yeah.
was always a pain in the ass.
Yep.
But for me, the biggest issue was that I would learn the rules, the player would learn the rules, we'd use it for one session, and then nobody would touch it again for like 6 months, and everybody forget how the fuck to do anything because it was never used again. So for like forever, I just NPCs are the net runners.
Yep. So for programs, I think the best program out of there that your netrunner is going to pick is Smart Eye. For the netrunners I did play would be, most often program I bought would have been Smart Eye. As for Rule of Cool, Vampire 2, just because when it attacks, it takes that program and uses it against you, which is just something nice to do to screw around an opponent, to use your own programs against you.
I really liked the idea of Psychodrome. Like, it had lingering side effects, and I thought that was cool. Like it gave you a twitch. You didn't want to go back and do it. It was a scary place. I liked bunnies too because it's like the net running version of the killer bunny from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
It really surprised me that there's not a holy hand grenade somewhere to follow it up.
Bunny wasn't so much a reference to Monty Python because it would just duplicate itself to screw around with and it's kind of very specific program, right? It's supposed to mess up with the
it goes against vampire.
I think that was another problem with the whole net running system is there was a lot of specific programs that this one program deals with, and it causes people to kind of like, I'm just going to use the generic, so it just turned into a cookie cutter type of scenario for most players.
Beyond that, I mean, like I said, we didn't really go into net running all that heavily. I liked the idea of termite, but it's so low powered that it's kind of useless.
Well, again, it was for Weeful runners, right? So the expectation was you were a net runner with a 2 or a 3. If you were doing a child campaign, right?
Yeah, it'd be great for that. The last section is just a list of prices for everything in the book, just so you don't have to look up how much something costs, which is kind of a neat idea. Like,
it's nice. They
nice,
they don't do it in the other chromes, so
no. But the other chromes do continue with the indexes.
Yes.
And like we said, they're the only Artalsaurian books that do. Sadly, because God forbid you'd be able to find something, even in the core rule book, which I've read 1,000 times, sometimes trying to find a specific piece of information is hair pulling. Like, it just kills you.
Yep.
An interesting thing to note about the original Chromebook, and I've owned 5 of them now.
Wow.
Is that it was covered in like a bit like a plastic film to give it that
Yeah,
extra shine, and that film
always peels
starts
off.
peeling off the more you use it. So my original copy of Chrome, it's it's got like a curled up half front of the half of the front cover is just this curled up piece of film, and underneath it, it's the paper cover is all faded and kind of crusty, and just like, damn,
Yeah,
this thing has seen some love.
my copy never suffered from that, but one of my friends had his copy that constantly happened too. So one day he just ripped off the film
Yeah,
because he was just tired
I've
of it.
got at this. I've got my original, and I've got an like a almost unopened copy of it at this point. And then I've got the other three copies I've bought have been lost or stolen over time.
Yeah. Well, that's Chrome One. We definitely aren't going to have time for Chrome for any of the other Chromes. So yeah,
You know,
that's it.
I was almost positive that's how it was going to work. Even
Yeah,
just doing like a couple of bits at a time. Like these books are dense. They're full of fucking cool stuff, and you want to talk about it all. Like I definitely want to talk about a ton of stuff that we just didn't
glossed
even
over.
mention.
Yeah, but definitely.
I want to talk about individual pieces of art and like the flavor text of stuff. I words cannot express how much I love the Chromebooks and how integral they were to sucking me into the world.
Definitely, because they were immersive, right? So each piece of
Yeah,
tech had kind of the description in world, which was nice.
every there are two kinds of cyberpunk players out there. There are the people who are for some reason offended almost by the amount of gear porn in present with cyberpunk, and then there are others who there's the others who live for that shit. Even if it's not something we're ever going to use, the idea that it exists in the world, it makes the world a better place. And having it all tied into corporations, and this is what this piece of gear looks like. This is what this car looks like. That sucks you in like nothing else.
Yep.
Um, you don't have to worry about like one person having a different mental picture of something than another player, and them having to like a car. Like is it a four door? Is it a hatchback? Front engine, mid engine? Like no, the picture's there. You've got it.
Yep. So overall, I think Chromebook is. I would say it's probably my favorite, just because it was the first one, and really
Yeah.
drew me into the game. But we are going to continue this series and talk about the other Chromebooks, which also escalate the game from a mechanics point of view. And we'll get into that when we hit those sections. So for now, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed our wonderful rambles. Like I said, next session or next episode, we're going to be doing The New Hope, Tales of the Red. So look forward to that. Yeah, so I am Cybersmily. Check out my work on cybersmily.net. It's a website that gives plenty of utilities for Cyberpunk 2020 as well as Red. I'm on various Discords as well as Reddits, so check me out there.
I am Wisdom000, Derek Bernier. I run Datafortress2020, the largest, most comprehensive Cyberpunk 2020 site on the planet, and I've run it since 1996. You can find me on. You can also find me on Facebook at the Datafortress2020 and Cyberpunk 2020 and Cybernation Uncensored groups. I moderate the. I'm a mod on the Cyberpunk 2020 and Cybernation group, and an admin on the Datafortress 2020 group, obviously. You can find me on the various Cyberpunk Reddits. I lurk on the Discords. And that's about it for my social media presence. Now that the days of ICQ and Yahoo Messenger are over. Old people will get those
ICQ.
references. ICQ. Yeah. But yeah, please reach out to us with your comments, suggestions, complaints, and criticisms. We love hearing from you. If you've got ideas that you want to see us explore in future shows, or just, to say hi. We like talking about the game.
Yeah, we do.
Regardless of whether we're doing the interview or not. Yeah, we'd like to thank Rob Mulligan and Cybernation Uncensored for hosting us.
Thanks, Rob.
And yeah, thanks, Rob. And thank you to all of you for joining and listening to us rant and rave for a couple of hours.
Yep. See you in 2 weeks.